Hey guys, Mark Holmes here, and as always, thank you guys for watching, commenting, and subscribing to the show. We Sports Report. Without you guys, this doesn't work. Sitting here drinking some Theraflu, trying to deal with this flu bug that I got, and out here at least watering the grass seed that we put down. I asked for some help or ideas on getting the grass to grow. Somebody said put bath salts and water the hell out of it. Are we talking real bath salts, or are we talking bath salts and drugs? I'm just trying to clarify that because I don't have either of them. So anyway, any tips to help the grass grow out here at around my fish pond in the shady area, let me know. Gino Marchetti died today, and I know most of you guys are like, who? But see, I'm old enough to remember some of the old days of football. Gino Marchetti dates even me. But he was the first great defensive end. And unfortunately, they didn't start counting sacks or keeping records of it until much later. Deacon Jones, the guy who invented the sack, they don't exactly have a count of how many sacks he actually has. But Gino Marchetti, 11-time Pro Bowler, 9-time All-Pro for the Colts, was really the first defensive end that was just an absolute beast. See, he was an offensive lineman, so he knew how they were trying to block him. And he was just an absolute beast where he could just literally throw guys all over the place. And allegedly, he had 9 sacks in one game. And if you really love football, what I tell you guys to do is go back and look at some of those old game films. The game was a lot different than it was when what you're watching now. That game was brutal. And I mean brutal. It was none of this, in the grass, having the skirt on the quarterback. They killed each other. And I look at some of these players today and wonder how long of a career they would have had. I famously asked Drew Pearson if he had the rules today, back when he was playing football. He said he'd be in Huntsville, as in the prison, because he'd be stealing TDs off of these garbage-ass defensive backs. It was a real game back then. Not that it's not now, but you understand what I'm saying. But I've kind of noticed something with the Cowboys. Jerry Jones, after Jimmy Johnson, let everybody know that I'm the man in charge. I am the be-all, end-all. I make all decisions. The buck stops here. And he wanted to take all of the credit. He wanted to take all the spotlight. He wanted to take all the oxygen out of the room. But what I've noticed more so this offseason than any other one, and it seems like this has slowly been building, is you're seeing Stephen Jones more and more vocal every year. Go through the pre-draft press conference. Stephen Jones is talking more and more. The post-draft. I'm not saying Jerry Jones isn't as well, but not as much as it used to be. You're seeing everybody playing more of a role with this team. But you especially start to finally see, like, they've taken the rap off of Will McClay. I asked you before this offseason, how often did you actually hear Will McClay speak? You really didn't. Will McClay, just a couple of days ago, talked about Taco and whether or not he was going to be here and what he needed to do to be here. That used to be what you would hear from Jerry Jones, kind of setting the tone for a player and such. And now you're also seeing Will McClay documentary videos of getting ready for the draft, player personnel and scouting and things. And you're seeing more and more of this GM type work from Will McClay. You're seeing Stephen Jones talking more like Jerry Jones did, but a little bit more quieter about it, not really out there. And you're even seeing Jason Garrett kind of talking more and more about the coaching. And I find this interesting because, we had Stephen Jones talk about how Will McClay was working with Chris Richard on the type of players that he wanted and things on the field. When you hear about teams like the San Francisco 49ers, who the GM and the coach, Kyle Shanahan and Lynch, aren't seeing eye to eye and they don't like each other and they're not really working together. It's a far cry from what you're seeing in the rest of the NFL, and you've got to kind of like and say, okay, we're working together as a team. We may be several individuals, but we are all doing one cause. And I love that. Now when it comes to, and I'm kind of curious now, another thing I've heard a couple of times, and I'm trying to figure out where this is going to go, but it's Rico Gathers. During the pre-draft press conference, Jason Garrett said, we like where we are with tight ends. We've got Jason Witten back, we've got Dalton Schultz, we've got Rico Gathers still on the roster. And we didn't draft a tight end. Now I'm curious because I believe Scott Linehan was given a lot of the controls last year. Scott Linehan was the be-all, end-all when it came to offense. He brought in Paul Alexander, which was a complete disaster. He was the play caller. It didn't turn around until we got Amari Cooper and that they started changing the play calling when it was literally, we're about to fire this guy in the middle of the season. So now that he's gone, and you got Kellen Moore, who is the offensive coordinator, I'm wondering how that's going to change the dynamic of Rico Gathers. Because the problem with Rico is, Rico was a project. Let's make no mistake about it. He was a basketball player, hadn't played football since the 8th grade. But here's the thing. Antonio Gates was a basketball player too, and maybe one of the best tight ends of all time. And I think they screwed him up by saying, you are going to be a blocker. And sometimes the Cowboys have a tendency, or had a tendency in the past, to screw a player up because they're just saying, we're going to make you what we need instead of taking what you do well and using it. And Rico, when he was lighter, was smoother moving. He was more of the modern day tight end that could go down the field and catch the football. Instead, they wanted to make him the Mike Ditka throwback, blocking tight end. And they screwed him up. He just didn't look comfortable when he ran. Now I'm curious to see how they use him, or if they use him on this point, because I think that there's second thoughts on Rico. And a lot of times, coaching can be all the difference in the world. I gotta move the hose here, guys. Hold on. Trying to water the grass here. Right back with you now. Hold on. So, I'm curious to see what they try and do with Rico from this standpoint forward. Because I feel like Now that Scott Linehan is gone, and you've gone out and you've gotten a lot of firepower. And let's be honest, this team offensively has more firepower across the board than we've had in a long time. And I think that you're going to see the Dallas Cowboys, they're going to feature Zeke Elliott without a doubt. But I think they're going to try and use him where you're talking about 15 to 20 carries. And hopefully they're going to be able to see that Tony Pollard, I'm going to do a video when Michael's done live streaming, about Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard can be a great dynamic third down receiver, a change up. More than anything else, this offense failed because they didn't have a lot of options. Teams looked and they said, basically, we know what they're going to do. But you have so many guys that can play different roles. Your wide receivers can be interchangeable on the outside, the inside. You can start using more motion. You can use 12 personnel where you've got 2 tight end sets where you can pass out of that, or you can go ahead and run out of it. Make the defense have to choose how to die, so to speak. And I'm believing that this change in the Dallas Cowboys philosophy is going all out. And I just look at this and I feel totally different about how this team is run management-wise. In the past, you've had to look at it and say, you know what, Jerry Jones was putting his nose in maybe too much. He was, calling down on the hot phone from his second suite down on the field. He was making the calls at draft day where we make these crazy moves up and down, reaching for players that we didn't really know about. He was making crazy trades for, Roy Williams and, I can't think of, from Seattle. But making these crazy moves on impulse and gut feeling instead of actually looking at the numbers. And I believe at this point in Jerry Jones's life, he realizes he can't do it all. And that if he wants to get that ring again, he has to let go some of that control. And I believe that control release has already begun. That's why Will McClay is now talking about players and what they need to do to be on this team. That's why you're seeing Stephen Jones talk about the type of guys that they're looking at, the way they're going to go ahead and draft, the way they're putting away the team and paying players. That's why you're seeing Jason Garrett talking more about the players and the acquisition and how they fit in there. Jerry Jones has released a lot of what he was doing before and basically instilled the power to the other guy. And ultimately, that may be Jerry Jones's legacy, is getting these guys in positions to be successful. When Al Davis got old, the things that he was doing as a young man didn't work anymore. And instead of him delegating it, he still kept trying to run it the same way. And it ran them into the ground. And I think Jerry Jones may have learned a little bit from that. So we'll have to wait and see how it all works out. But it's definitely a new ball game with the Dallas Cowboys. And hopefully it all translates out on the field. There's been a lot of positives thus far on this offseason, and I feel good. Anything can happen, but you at least put yourself in a position to win. I'm Mark Holmes. I'm hoping I can get some grass to grow. I'll see you guys soon.